Here's the homepage of OTBsports.com. I had to bite my tongue. Matt Doherty, an Ireland career and respect for Coleman. He joined Nathan on last night's football show. Well worth digging out that interview. Same case goes for Michael Murphy's interview with Nathan last night. It's the first time I've thought of retirement, is the big line from that. We're going to get into the Daniel Kinahan situation in just a moment, with the Department of Foreign Affairs contact UAE over Kinahan role in Fury-Joshua fight. And Ross Talton organisers hopeful despite postponement extensions. That is OTBsports.com for you this morning.
Yeah, basically NathanMurphy.com, which is just the way he likes it on. The Irish Independent for you this morning in the back page, an action shot there of the Irish runner Nadia Power, who's been in training at the Morton Stadium as sport begins to trickle back to life. A nice shot there. League of Ireland in danger as FAI board come under dull pressure. Dan McDonnell writes there, European clubs asked to give up portion of prize money in attempts to find a solution to that. We'll double back to that story in just a few moments' time. And the GA's injury fund remains on ice, writes Colin Keys, until June the 29th. So any clubs or counties asking their players to return to training at this stage are in danger, it seems, should anything untoward happen.
The Irish Examiner this morning leads with that League of Ireland story. The top 4 clubs have been asked to contribute European cash to League Fund. So this is Dundalk, Shamrock Rovers, Bows and Derry, all being requested to donate 100k to the kitty to help keep the League of Ireland afloat, basically. Ali claims he was betrayed by sale of COVID-19 Snapchat video, meanwhile, and zero tolerance, GAA clubs being educated on dealing with racism. You've also got more there from Michael Murphy speaking yesterday, Paul Flynn saying, I played an All-Ireland semi-final with a broken thumb. Will that strengthen his case for Oisin Langan later? Time will tell. And Rose sets early pace with stunning 63 with a disappointed-looking Rory McIlroy after he missed a putt during the first round of the Charles Schwab Challenge at Colonial yesterday.
Lots of variety in the Irish Times this morning. Emmett Malone takes on that story of the FAI planned stalling as clubs seek clarity on that. Talks to continue, it seems, over the coming days. Johnny Watterson takes on the Daniel Kinahan boxing promoter story. Boxing world couldn't care less about Kinahan's background, writes Watterson there. Will the US Open go ahead? Asks Kevin Mitchell. In the tennis concerns there, the big name players and some key stakeholders as well are all a touch concerned about travelling to New York towards the end of August, and that may see that tournament go south. And reports as well that Michael Schumacher was to undergo stem cell surgery in the next few days are inaccurate, writes Charles Richards here. Seems it is as if it is the plan, but not during the pandemic. He's still recovering, of course, after that skiing accident all the way back in 2013.
The London Times this morning leads with the story here that Minister aims to make sport colourblind. This is the Sports Minister, Nigel Huddleston. He has a plan to deal with shocking lack of black leaders. He says rugby pay row at crisis point. Meanwhile, this is the rip between Premiership Rugby and Rugby Players Association over plans to impose a quarter of a pay cut. It deepened yesterday when the league executives announced they were cutting off all communication on the issue. Les Ferdinand says, we've been talking for 20 years, let's tackle the problem of racism. And then the story, just to touch on here, is concern over a £200 million fight. You've got Matt Lawton, Matt Dickinson, Rick Broadbent on the case here. And inside the London Times this morning, they've got a 2-page spread, basically. Criminal parasite at centre of £200 million fight. So you've got the 3 big figures there in the animation in the middle of your screen. You've got Anthony Joshua, you've got Tyson Fury, and you've got Daniel Kinahan. Inset then you've got Kinahan being led away by police in Spain a while ago. So the UK Times very much on top of this at this point.
The Irish Daily Mail this morning, a shot of Rory at the Charles Schwab Challenge, which I watched a bit of last night, and interesting to hear a lot of the players. Didn't make a huge amount of difference that there was no fans, actually. It was a big takeaway from Colonial yesterday evening, including a lot of swearing from the players on. Justin Thomas with the F-bomb at some point when one of his shots went a bit awry, which you wouldn't have heard if there was a lot of fans there. So I'm all for it. Keep the fans out is the message this morning. Michael Murphy, COVID concern has to be respected, says that he won't object to any player who decides that they don't want to play once the green light is given, obviously, for a return there. And John Fallon on vague restart plan leaves League of Ireland clubs languishing.
The thing about the golf yesterday was that there was a situation that you might get at a club GAA match where Justin Thomas sunk a putt and there was somebody in the car park beside beeping to congratulate Justin Thomas on it, which, you know, is my favourite way of celebration. The Irish Daily Star, we may as well lead with the front page here. Send back Kingpin to face trial. Government's bid to have Kinahan extradited revealed. Major broadcasters here and in Britain to shun fights. Back page of the Irish Daily Star. Betrayal. Frustration for Ali after he receives a 1-game ban. Rory's back in the swing. LOI plan lacked in specifics, writes Paul Lennon. This is the FAI board who've rejected a proposed financial package for the League of Ireland due to a lack of specific details. Two tribes go to war. That's Kieran Cunningham writing about club versus county on the GEA front. And Friday Night Lights, all your top tips for the Curragh Guineas meeting. Racing very much back in Ireland now at this point.
Be interesting to see if they do shun the fights with Johnny Nelson on YouTube channel yesterday, saying what a standout guy Daniel Kinahan was. So it'll be interesting to see. He's obviously works for Sky and their boxing punditry team, so we shall see. The Irish Sun for you this morning has the Daniel Kinahan tie into the Fury Joshua fight on the front page today, and over on the back page is Costly, Ban and Van is the back page splash here, and that is an FA panel decreeing that Dele Alli is not a racist. Is what they say, but he does pick up a one-game ban for a social media post, which Sheahan went into a bit of detail on earlier. They've decreed that as discriminatory. And Virgil van Dijk is getting £220 a week to stay at Liverpool and become the highest paid player in the club's history.
You take that. Like Virgil van Dijk being the greatest player in the history of Liverpool, of course, as Nathan Murphy put his neck on the block during the week. Back page of the Mirror is I Was Betrayed. It is Dele Alli and his comments that one of his close mates in Snapchat screwed him over by selling that video to a newspaper, and that is why he's going to be serving a ban. Black Lives Matter to replace names on all Prem shirts, and Inter plot raid for Ace Hector. Inter Milan, they are planning a summer swoop for Hector Bellerin.
On the Telegraph this morning, a couple of important bits of reporting from Ben Rumsby. We brought you the story yesterday. He follows up on it today. About 3% of board positions across UK sport being occupied by black board members. News today that the government are to order a review after that research. And also Irish Premier leads anger over Fury's Fixer and Joshua fights. And story, of course, in one of the most circulated papers in the UK now, with the firm focus solely on Daniel Kinahan's involvement.
The Guardian this morning leads with a story here about Black Lives Matter. Show of support, Premier League players to wear Black Lives Matter on shirts. RFU, meanwhile, has no plans to bring in Rooney Rule for recruitment, which is an interesting one. You've got Ellis Genge coming out saying the issue in rugby has been a white man's game for a number of years, but no plans to bring in a Rooney Rule at the top level. New Goal, Chris Jansen is supporting charity projects in Africa, and it's just not okay. Anderson calls for more BAME representation in cricket.
And the Racing Post finally from me this morning. On the back page is a preview of Juve against Milan in Serie A, and then on the front page a story of actual racing, obviously, which is back on the front page there, including Siskin at the Curragh.
Final one for me is the Herald's League of Ireland season in serious peril. FAI running out of time to come up with club financial package. And then the OTB Sports app. Lastly, brand new app here. Of course, if you haven't got it, then have a look at this. You can get all the latest news, all the latest podcasts. It's available now on the App Store or on the Google Play Store. The slick brand new there is our live video player, if you happen to be joining us on audio this morning. So there's the OTB Sports app available now on the App Store and in the Google Play Store. Right, so we're moving on to a couple of the stories from the papers this morning. Will we start briefly with the Daniel Kinahan stuff? Adrian, just a quick mention of these because we're going to get into this in a bit more depth in a moment. But you've noticed certainly greater coverage of this in the UK over the last 24 hours.
Yeah, that mentioned Ben Rumsby in the Telegraph particularly. It had started to trickle through, and I've noticed some UK journalists on Twitter as well really getting behind it. I know some of them are engaging with Gary Lineker during the week as well. So whether that is a spike in the coverage and a spike in the interest, I suppose, really is what is required at the minute. That disappears over the next while remains to be seen. We had mentioned during the week that it hadn't appeared at all in the Guardian's reporting, and the various euphemistic language that was used around it, both I suppose from a UK print report point of view, and also for anybody who paid attention to the comments of Leah Varadkar and the Dáil yesterday, that You know, as reported by Ben Rumsey in the Telegraph today, as I mentioned just there, Irish Premier leads anger over Fury's fixer in Joshua fights. I having heard the comments yesterday, anger would not have been a word that I would have associated with Leah Varadkar there. It was, again, euphemistic language in response to a question from Alan Kelly and the Dáil, and several other TDs obviously have broached this topic. We are obviously in an unusual position politically in this country, and so whether the appetite is there from the current bunch to do anything about it, given that some of them, including the Minister for Sport, in so much as he is in any way interested in sport, is outgoing, and you know, whether that'll be taken on or not remains to be seen. Yeah. But certainly that reporting, again, like I mentioned just there, like it's an unavoidable headline on the front page of the sports section, one of the most circulated newspapers in the UK, that is giving chapter and verse on the character of Daniel Kinahan.
It's mad. This is like a proper battle now. It's not. There's no vagaries about where the boxing world lies in this. We're going to hear from Bob Arum in a moment, and it's pretty. It's not sort of dodging questions, or it's not sort of avoiding the Daniel Kinahan question. It's pretty clear where his support lies, and that he's pretty happy doing business with him and all that sort of thing. So at least it's very clear where the trenches have been dug at this point, and if anything does change, you're going to have to move boxing authorities from a fairly stubborn position at this point.
If I just will say on that, if anybody wants to know what the boxing world thinks about the involvement of Daniel Kinahan in this fight in a regime like Saudi Arabia, just watch Billy Joe Saunders. Just lash his name into Twitter, and you'll see the clip from yesterday. They don't give a toss. He doesn't give a toss. Like Bob Arum will say much of the same. It's I haven't seen any of it, so nothing to see here.
Yeah, the news cycle of this is going to be big boxing name says they don't care about Daniel, or they realise that Daniel Kinahan is a great businessman and that they don't really care about other stuff to do with him, and it'll just be a repetition of those sort of stories till the point where the fight eventually happens, and people will still watch the fight in Britain. It's just going to be very interesting if there is actual political movement that affects the television broadcasters in all of this. That could be the one area where you could potentially hurt them. But in terms of the actual organising of this fight in Saudi Arabia with the people involved, I can't see anything changing on that front. Just a couple of other things here, Adrian. Do you want to kick us off here on the League of Ireland situation? Because this has been an ever-developing story over the last couple of days. Like, LOI season in serious peril reads the back of the Herald. The Irish Examiner in front of me, top four asked to contribute euro cash to league fund. They're in a very precarious situation.
I think this story is almost, I mean, I don't know if underreported is quite accurate, but hasn't been given the coverage that it deserves over the last number of months, because I have yet to see a coherent plan that's been put on the table for the League of Ireland, either pre-coronavirus pandemic or post, indeed. In terms of exactly how the FAI are going to tackle this thing, like the live streaming thing was obviously something that was put out there at some point pre all the coronavirus thing, and now the latest is, I think that the League of Ireland, the clubs of the League of Ireland fans should be extremely concerned about this, because clubs, 4 key clubs in the shape of Dundalk, Rovers, Bows and Derry City are essentially been asked to bail out a number of other clubs. So the top line here is that the clubs have been in conversation with the FAI over the last number of days to try and come up with some sort of a rescue plan, and they're running out of time now. They're going to get stuck into it again over the coming days, and we'll see what comes of that. But one of the key things that was mooted, in fact, it might have been yesterday, there was talk about external new money. I think if you might remember that in some of the newspapers yesterday. That external, in inverted commas, new money seems like it might be the FAI asking those 4 clubs to dip into their UEFA prize pot to fund some of the other clubs to subsidise them. So what they are saying is, this 4-way tournament that's been mooted. So if the clubs don't decide that they don't want to dip into their UEFA prize money, that what the FAI might do is just strip back some of the money that they were putting towards that 4-way sort of mini tournament, which is effectively kind of the same thing. Either way, it's asking those clubs to subsidise others, and it is desperate times. I mean, yeah, I as a solution here, it seems quite remarkable to me.
Where are the revenue streams that Niall Quinn was keeping close to his chest 3-4 weeks ago? Remember, he said that they're looking into the possibility of streaming, and that could be potentially one area where they're looking to get added revenue. then
that was never going to work for me on like that. Just on that specifically, like the League of Ireland attendances, like the hardcore League of Ireland fan numbers are so small. The idea of streaming that people are going to pay for the streaming of games, it just never stood up for me.
So that was the one that he did reveal, and then he said that there were a couple of other potential avenues of revenue that he could not reveal because he didn't want to put those situations in jeopardy. What were those situations? How far down the track did Niall Quinn get to making these deals? Like, I sure hope that Niall Quinn wasn't keeping close to his chest the fact that he wanted the top 4 clubs in the League of Ireland to stump up their own cash that they've earned via qualifying for European competition. I sure hope that was not the plan of the FAI here, because this is a last-ditch attempt to try and get some sort of cash swilling through the league again, because it seems like final destination stuff here. It feels like an act of desperation. And this is not good. As you say, it's one of these stories. I don't know if it's been underreported, in fairness. I think it's been on the back page pretty much every single day. But it's big. It's a hugely worrying development for the League of Ireland here that Dundalk, Rovers, Bows, Derry looking to contribute 100 grand, because you can imagine that even the top 4 clubs aren't in an amazing financial position as well. They've also had their revenues cut, but in fairness, they will be in a better position.
The difficulty. Sorry, Andrew. One last point. The difficulty for the League of Ireland, and to be absolutely fair to them, the FAI in this instance, is that they have run dry with the very obvious usual ports of call for when it comes to desperate measures in terms of financial input. They've run dry because of the state, obviously, that the association was in prior to this. So to be absolutely fair to them, that's the context. But it does need a bit more creative thinking.
Listen, I'm not saying that the act of desperation comes as a result of a problem that they've created themselves, but that is what they're dealing with at the moment. One final thing, the BME story. Adrian, what is the latest on this? You've been on top of it this morning.
Yeah, Ben Rumsby, we brought you the story yesterday in the Telegraph. The Telegraph done a brilliant piece of research yesterday to reveal that 3% of board members on government-funded bodies, by the way, sports NGBs in the UK, just 3% of them were black board members, which is obviously desperately underrepresented, including none in the Premier League. And further detail on that today, including that there is no Premier League owner, chairman or CEO who's black, which is an incredible indictment of where the league is at, and virtually the same situation in the English Football League. But the big news from that today was obviously that the Telegraph were in touch with the government yesterday, and the UK government are saying that they're going to review that scenario. It's definitely a piece of research that needs to be done on this side of the water as well to see exactly where we're at. But it does make you believe that, like when the government get that call yesterday from the Telegraph to say, we've done this piece of research, here are a bunch of boards that you're pouring money into, and they're desperately underrepresented when it comes to BAME. And there is only one way now that the UK government can respond to that, which is exactly what they've done, which is to say that they're going to carry out a review into it.